We'd like to thank Optics Planet for providing an optic for review. We're going to take a look at the Vortex Strike Eagle 5-25 by 56mm, 34mm main tube, first focal plane rifle scope. This is a nicely balanced optic placed in the 5-25 power magnification range with the first focal plane reticle, 3.7-inch eye relief, a parallax from 15 to infinity yards, XD glass, and a decent return to zero after adjustments feature, and offers a really good warranty. The optic is easy and comfortable to get behind. The eye box is not too fussy. The glass is nice and clear, and the turret adjustments click nicely with a crisp, audible, and tactile sensation. Stay tuned for my honest first impressions. It's working. It's working pretty good. We are using the Vortex Strike Eagle. This is the 5-25 by 56 Strike Eagle, and it's working. Seems like a pretty nice scope overall. We did quantify all the results. This one is outperforming the Venom by a lot. The tracking on this in terms of tracking reliability has been pretty good. It doesn't have any regions on the periphery of the tracking adjustment range where it just goes like haywire and drops off or quits moving or moves in the wrong direction. We saw that in the Venom. The Strike Eagle seems to basically track right up until you get like within 2 or 3 clicks of the edge. It'll kind of, then your tracking precision is off. It's still moving a tiny bit, but it's once you get within just a couple clicks of the edge, it kind of stops, but it mechanically stops before you just continue dialing and nothing happens, right? So that was one of the first issues we saw on the Venom. I do believe this is outperforming the older ones that I've seen when we did a lot of the training. So this, I don't know if they upgraded some of the internals, but it's tracking pretty reliably. The precision is pretty good. We have the target board down here to be able to tell. I can adjust under just a little bit under 15 yards for the parallax, so I can get a real nice sharp adjustment at exactly 25 meters here. Okay, and I'm just verifying I got a screw on my bench here. So if I move back, not that much, I'm exactly from the control group where the reticle is placed right about in here. The control group right kind of in the front of here. That's usually about where the reticle is placed. I am exactly 25 meters from the measuring board here. And let's measure the reticle again. I did a full write-up a few months ago. I thought I posted it, but apparently I forgot. So I'll share that with you once I dig it up again. But the reticle is a little bit short. It's about 1% or 1.5% too short. So that means when you go down in the reticle all the way down 10 mils, it would need another click to get to a true 10 mils. Measuring horizontally, it's perfect. Perfect horizontally, vertically, on the spine of the reticle, it is a little bit short. I'm trying to discern exactly where that starts. After about 6 mils, you have a significant error of about 1%. So after 100 clicks, you're going to need another click or 2 clicks, just right in between there, to get the reticle squared up with reality. Okay, the clarity of this particular optic is actually pretty good. Seems very clear. Sorry about that. Seems very clear. And I measured this in a variety of different lighting before. The low light test came out very good. I got it cranked up. Let's crank it up to 25 here. Okay. And I am, for comparative reasons, It's right in there with the rest of your decent glass in the $1,000 or $1,200 price range. I'm reading how many cycles per millimeter we got. And I think it's actually maybe 1 or 2 points better than the Arkin. If you want to compare it to like the EP5 or the SH4, it's like maybe just a tiny bit, like barely readable, a little bit more clear than that on 25 power until you get to the edge of the lens. Now I'm going to do that and come all the way this way. Hold on. Once I go to the edge of the lens, it gets significantly a little bit more blurry. So that has to do with the shaping of the lenses, how well they polish up to the edge, how well they maintain their geometry. It's not terrible. I mean, I'm at the far edge of the lens looking through the edge, kind of. So it's very similar glass to like the EP5. Maybe not quite as good as that one was in that regard. And come up to the other edge. What'll happen when you're shooting extreme long range and you're shooting really far, you'll dial and you max out your elevation on your turret. And you will notice that stuff gets really wall-eyed and really blurry. That's what's going on is you're looking through the edge of the lens. They can mechanically design, a little more adjustment or a little less depending on how radical they want to push it, right? So I appreciate when they kind of stop the ability of the scope to be adjusted beyond like where it's a reliable image of the target, right? Because you shouldn't probably shoot where you got kind of a distorted vision of the target. But this one is not too bad. It's not like totally out of focus like some will be when you, there's a lot of optics, even real expensive stuff that's $3,000 or $4,000. That when you crank it all the way to the edge, like if you're shooting at 2,500 yards and you crank it all the way up, it's so blurry you can't hardly even see anything. And a lot of guys think, oh, my scope broke until they dial back down. Oh, it came back into focus again. Then they dial all the way up. Oh, it broke again. No, you're looking through the edge of the lens. There are design parameters where you can basically tell the guy building it, hey, like don't let it look through the edge so much, like mechanically stop the adjustment before then, right? And stop the adjustment before the tracking is still reliable. So those are the details in design that a guy can look for long-range precision applications. But man, you got to be shooting pretty far usually to do that, unless you're doing other things, okay? I mean, there's times when your mounts and stuff don't exactly line up, and just to get it zeroed, you might be sorted towards the edge already, and a little bit of adjustment will throw it off, right? So it's not always the case of extreme long-range shooting applications, but it is a significant factor to take hold of. So the clarity's good. The controls are good. I got a nice crisp reticle. It's very nicely balanced and simple reticle. It goes down 10 mils, which is good. It's kind of what they would call the conifer tree style reticle, okay? And we got little tiny dots, like I think they're 0.2 mil dots on the spine of the reticle going off horizontally. You have 0.5 mil marks going down the middle of the spine of the reticle for your holdovers. So you got 0.5 mil indicators there. So like 9.5, 10, 8.5, 9, all that kind of stuff. On your horizontal portion, you have 10th mil marks when you're on the outer extremity of the reticle going off laterally, like between 4 and 8 mils. You have very fine 10th mil measuring marks, which is awesome. Also above the center of the bullseye, you can go up in between the 4 mil and the 10 mil mark above the center of the bullseye, and you have 10th mil markings there. That's really good for milling targets. You take the size of the target in inches times 25.4 divided by how many mils it is. That's how far it is in meters. Or you take the size of the target in inches times 27.77 divided by the mils. And that's how far it is in yards. Basic ranging formula using trigonometry, man, right? So there's that. I do like the feature of the reticle going up at least 10 mils above the zero mark. That means you can do special zeros where you actually zero up there, like above the center aiming point for extreme long range applications. Then you can use that entire reticle. You actually have 20 mils of adjustment theoretically then from the very top to the bottom. And depending on how you want to zero it, you have a lot more real estate to work with. It goes off to the sides. You do have horizontal and down the spine of the reticle. You have additional markings in the very thick part of the reticle where it turns into like a black thick line, right? You do have a 10 mil mark, 15 mils, it looks like. So every 5 additional mils, you have a marking there. All the way to the edge of the scope on even 5 power, so that if I'm trying to communicate, which a lot of the scope, the purpose of the scope most of the time is a communication device between you and someone else, trying to explain where the target is or how far to where the, you know, where a target reference point might be, trying to walk someone else in on target. You can watch Saw's training materials. He goes over the true applications of rifle scopes from a special forces sniper perspective. It's very much a communication tool. And so you want to be able to have some kind of markings going all the way down and to the sides, so that when you have to say, hey guys, it's like 55 mils to the side, you can measure it. You're not guessing, right? You have some kind of markings there so you can walk other guys onto a new target. Very important. So I like that. It's like again, I said, it's clear, it's reliable, it's not stupid heavy. All your controls are smooth. The illumination is fine. Magnification is actually, the ring is not super tight in terms of like torque required to turn it. It is smooth though, so it's tight in a smooth kind of way, but it's not like it's not binding. Like a lot of them, you really have to torque on it. So it's a little bit colder today than it normally is. So it's like something you're going to want to be aware of when it gets real cold. The grease in these will actually bind up, and the dimensions of the tubes and the tubes that slide within the tubes change dimensions as stuff shrinks in the cold weather, and it differentially expands due to sun heating and all that, and so stuff can get stuck. Your diopter, you can adjust that like way wall-eyed. Hey, Molly, get out of here. It's a cat, sorry. You can absolutely get this tuned in real sharp for your eye. It's a nice 5 to 25 scope. I think it's balanced out nicely. Price point wise, there is stuff that's cheaper that performs about the same, in my opinion. But this is like, if you like Vortex, or if they're available where you're at in your area, you know, they do have really good warranty and they have good customer, you know, like even at the store, it's nice to just go into the store and have it replaced. If you live by the Vortex store, assuming there will be civilization to do that in, right? But for normal sports or hunting or, you know, like competition type stuff, that's, some guys do like the ability to just take it to the store. I find myself highly inconvenienced if I have to take it in because it broke. So I don't like to have, I prefer ruggedness over customer service. But I mean, I haven't beat the crap out of this one enough to know how rugged it is, but from prior experience on other ones, man, I'll just say it like this to be nice. Precision rifle optics are a delicate instrument, so be careful with them. Like if you over torque, usually what happens is guys will over torque these rings, the scope rings. I think these are like Badgers on here, the M40A3 rings, right, that I use on a lot of my stuff. If you tighten these up too much, like over, I think 18 inch-pounds, you'll compress the tube asymmetrically, you'll smush it, and then stuff won't adjust. It will not operate properly. And so a lot of guys, oh, this scope sucks, it's broke. Nah, maybe you over torque that. Yeah, you do want to pay attention. They started putting a giant label on these, like a big sticker that's wrapped around the tube that you have to like cut off with a knife. Just tell you, hey man, like don't over torque your rings, because we don't want to fix the scope you continuously break. So do be mindful of that. The proportions are nice. I think you can tell a lot from the proportions of the scope. We talked about this before. This is kind of what I would consider to be in the classic proportions. What I'm referring to is the length of the scope, the objective bell housing, right? The angle here, and the length here, your focal length. This is more forgiving in terms of being able to get a real nice crisp focus, because your focal point, when it's elongated, you can have a lot more of that adjustment of your reticle going this way and this way in the tube, and you'll get a lot more fine adjustment because that focal point is still very fine on a flatter, smooshed out X. Whereas if the compact designs, they're more compressed of a scope, you can just look at a glance at the geometry, you can know, man, that one they're going to have to execute everything perfectly for it to work. But there's a reason why rifle scopes do have a similar shape to them, like this, okay? And this is the old style classic lines, which I actually like the Schmidt & Bender PM2 utilizes the classic dimensions, because then they can, even though they have good glass, they still have even more forgiveness within the geometry of the focal points coming together. So I can see that as being a plus deal. Maybe that's why I can get it so crisp on this target. That's why it has such good sharp clarity, is because I can adjust everything real fine to see very clearly. Yeah, I mean, Vortex has a good reputation. A lot of guys love them. A lot of guys hate them. I'm indifferent. It's just a tool, right? Like any other tool. I look at price point and features. I think that it's not unreasonable, especially a few years ago when there wasn't. I mean, Vortex was one of the companies that kind of first, in some kind of elite German type deal, had the specifications and the feature sets that guys like us who are doing long range precision rifle work, right, very specific genre of shooting, that we kind of desired, like mil configurations, first focal plane, all that kind of business, illuminated reticle, right? So Vortex has been around for a long time in those regards. A lot of guys like them. And then, of course, people get emotional about product one way or the other. I make jokes and make funny stuff at classes just to get people's goat, but I don't hate Vortex or love them or whatever. It's just a tool. Does it work? Yeah, this one works fine. The Venom didn't really work, in my opinion, for what it's advertised for. The Venom seemed, man, I'd be very frustrated if I was trying to kill something and I kept adjusting and this scope was not moving. You know how much ammo you're going to waste with that? That's terrible. This one doesn't do that. This one actually works normal. In terms of really cutting down, in the price point range, is this exactly in the center? I don't know. You have to run out the process. You have to figure out what you exactly need for where you're at and what you're trying to accomplish. So that's not really for me to decide. I know I have my other preferences. I do kind of push those a little more than some other deals, but this Vortex Strike Eagle is fine. It's not exhibiting some of the malfunctions I've seen in the earlier days at the classes. A lot of these would break immediately, or they would completely not work, or you'd continue turning the knob and it would quit moving and then it'd pick up moving again because of also one thing guys will do is they'll over torque these turrets here. There's the little set screws. These are pop up and they have a big coin on top to loosen it. But a lot of guys would frickin' over torque the little set screws in there and actually deform that deal. So it's clicking, but it's not moving the inner post, right? On some of the older models. I've seen that happen too. User error a lot of times. But it was hard when you're working a line of dozens and dozens of shooters, all with broken scopes, to identify each one that didn't work, right? So some of that rests on the hands of the designer too, to try to make it foolproof, which is always a good feature, because then we can do stuff wrong and it still don't break, right? So yeah, it works fine. Good scope. Little more money than I would spend for something in this class. If I was going to spend that kind of money, maybe I'd spend it on something a little different, but hey, it's fine. It worked good. So that's my opinion based on the results I've seen. And we did the full test. It's not like a guess on the tracking. It's not like a guess on the glass quality. We actually measure it in terms of numbers, and I can comparatively tell you on how it's performing. So the glass is real sharp. The tracking's almost perfect. The reticle is a tiny bit off, but it'll work. And all that stuff you can account for in your ballistic software if you're running software, and you can definitely account for it in your charts. Simply write where the bullet landed. What number did you have to dial in? Where did you have to hold on the reticle for the bullet to land where you wanted it to? Just write that number down. It doesn't matter what the math is then. because your empirical data is king. So, all right. Hopefully that was entertaining for you guys. I will catch you later on the flip side.